It was a gray, rainy afternoon when Emily Carson's phone rang, breaking the silence of her small living room. She had spent the day sorting through old photo boxes, memories of a life that no longer existed. Her husband Mark had been gone for almost 2 years, but his voice still echoed in every corner of the house. The pictures of their life together sat scattered across the coffee table: summer barbecues, vacations by the lake, smiles that now felt like ghosts. She wiped a tear from the corner of her eye and reached for the ringing phone. "Emily, it's Ryan," the voice said, deep and steady, though tinged with hesitation. It took her a moment to process. Ryan Miller, her late husband's best friend. He hadn't called her in months. Their last real conversation had been polite but awkward, somewhere between shared grief and quiet distance. She sat up straighter. "Ryan, is everything okay?" "I need a favor," he said, his tone calm but urgent. "It won't take long, just 2 hours. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." Emily frowned, glancing at the rain running down the window. 2 hours for what? He hesitated before replying. "I'll explain on the way. Can you come to my place?" Something in his voice, gentle yet serious, made it impossible to say no. Ryan had always been the kind of person who helped everyone else but never asked for anything. During Mark's illness, he had been there every step of the way, mowing the lawn, fixing things around the house, driving Mark to appointments. After the funeral, though, Ryan had slowly disappeared, as if he didn't know where he fit in her life anymore. She stared at the photo of Mark smiling by the lake, his arms slung around both of them, Rian on one side, her on the other. "All right," she finally said. "Give me 15 minutes." When she stepped outside, the rain had softened to a mist. She pulled her coat tighter, started her car, and drove through quiet streets lined with red and gold autumn leaves. The drive was short, but her mind raced. Why would Ryan need her help after so long? What could possibly be so urgent? When she arrived, Ryan was already outside, leaning against his old pickup truck, wearing a gray hoodie damp from the rain. He looked different, tired, a little older, his usual calmness replaced by unease. But when he saw her, he smiled faintly. "You came." "I said I would," Emily replied, shutting her car door. "Now tell me what's going on." He looked toward the road as if choosing his words carefully. "It's about Mark's cabin, the one by the lake." She froze. "The lake house." "Yeah," he said quietly. "It's been sitting empty since he passed. I went out there a few days ago to check on it. The roof's leaking and the place is falling apart. I didn't want to call a contractor without talking to you first." Emily's throat tightened. That cabin wasn't just a building, it was a place full of memories. She and Mark had built it together during their early years of marriage. Every corner filled with laughter, arguments, and moments that made their love real. She hadn't been back since his death. The thought of returning scared her more than she wanted to admit. "You could have just told me over the phone," she said quietly. Ryan nodded. "I could have, but I thought, maybe it's time you saw it again. Maybe both of us need to." Emily looked at him, studying his face. He wasn't pushing, just offering. His eyes, though tired, carried the same steady kindness that had always made her feel safe. After a long pause, she sighed. "You said it'll only take 2 hours. He smiled faintly. "That's the plan." She hesitated only a moment longer before climbing into the truck. The inside smelled faintly of pine and coffee, just like she remembered from years ago. As Ryan started the engine, she glanced at him. "You've always been terrible at giving details. Where exactly are we going?" He smirked. "We'll see." The rain grew heavier as they drove. The city lights faded behind them, replaced by winding country roads and tall trees swaying in the wind. The rhythmic sound of rain hitting the windshield filled the quiet between them. For a while, neither spoke. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "You still haven't told me why this can't wait." Ryan kept his eyes on the road. "Because some things shouldn't be left to rot. That cabin was part of your life. Mark's life. It's part of mine, too." His words caught her off guard. There was a truth in them. She didn't expect a quiet loyalty she had almost forgotten. She turned to the window, watching the trees blur past. You always think about everyone else first, don't you? He chuckled softly. Maybe, or maybe I just don't know how to stop caring. For a moment, Emily didn't reply. The weight of his words settled between them, heavier than the rain. She remembered how Ryan had always been there, in every difficult moment, yet always in the background. He never tried to take Mark's place. He never crossed a line. He just stayed. As the truck climbed the final stretch of the hill, the trees opened up to reveal the lake below. It shimmered even under the cloudy sky, a mirror of the gray heavens above. The cabin stood by the shore, quiet and forgotten, its porch half covered in leaves. When Ryan parked, Emily stared at it through the rain-streaked window. "It looks smaller than I remember," she murmured. "Things usually do," he said softly. They stepped out into the cold drizzle. The smell of wet pine filled the air. The porch creaked under their feet, and Ryan pushed open the front door. Dust rose in the air, mixing with the faint scent of old wood and rain. Emily stood at the threshold, her eyes scanning the familiar space, the fireplace, the kitchen table, the worn-out couch where she and Mark used to sit on quiet evenings. Her heart clenched. "It's like time stopped here," she whispered. Ryan set his toolbox on the floor. "That's what I thought too." They worked in silence for a while, Ryan checking the roof beams, Emily clearing cobwebs from the windows. Every corner brought back a memory, some sweet, some painful. She found a photo tucked behind a frame on the wall, a picture of her, Mark and Ryan, standing together at the lake, arms linked. She stared at it, her fingers trembling slightly. Ryan walked over, wiping dust from his hands. "That was the summer we built the dock," he said quietly. Mark kept falling in the water. Emily laughed softly, the sound breaking through the heaviness in her chest. "He said it was bad luck to finish a dock without a splash." They both smiled, remembering for the first time in a long while. Emily felt something shift inside her, a small piece of peace returning. The rain outside began to pour harder, quing against the roof. Ryan looked out the window. "Looks like the storm's getting worse. We might be stuck here for a while." Emily turned to him, her heart still heavy, but softer now. "You said 2 hours. He met her eyes, a half smile on his face. "Guess I underestimated the weather?" As thunder rumbled in the distance, Emily realized something. Maybe this wasn't just a trip to fix an old cabin. Maybe it was about facing what they both had avoided for too long, the past, the pain, and the quiet truth that had been waiting between them all this time. The storm had only just begun. She could already tell. 2 hours wouldn't be enough. Thunder rolled over the lake as the rain poured harder, drumming against the roof like a heartbeat that wouldn't stop. Emily stood near the window, watching the sky flash with silver light. The cabin felt both familiar and foreign, a place full of memories that no longer belonged only to her. Ryan moved around quietly, checking the windows and adjusting the old fireplace that hadn't been used in years. "You sure this thing still works?" he asked, crouching beside it. Emily managed a faint smile. "If it doesn't, we'll freeze." Ryan struck a match, and soon a small fire began to glow, spreading warmth through the room. The flickering light cast long shadows on the wooden walls, softening the space that had felt so cold moments earlier. Emily sat down on the couch, pulling a blanket around her shoulders, still processing everything, the storm, the memories. Ryan's unexpected call. He joined her a moment later, setting 2 mugs of coffee on the table. The air smelled like pine and rain. For a while, neither spoke. The only sound was the storm outside and the fire crackling softly. "It feels strange being back here," she finally said, her voice low. "I thought I'd never see this place again." Ryan nodded slowly. "I didn't want to push you. I just thought maybe it was time. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to go back for a bit." Emily looked at him, his face calm but thoughtful in the firelight. "You make it sound so easy." He gave a small laugh. "It's not. I haven't been back here since the last time we all were." That made her chest tighten. She remembered that last summer vividly. Mark had been sick, but he insisted they all come to the cabin one more time. He had smiled through his pain, pretending things were normal. Ryan had stayed by his side the whole weekend, quietly helping, making sure no one saw how bad it had gotten. "Mark trusted you," Emily said softly. "He always said you were more like a brother than a friend." Ryan's eyes darkened for a moment. "He was my brother in every way that mattered." Silence filled the room again, heavy but not uncomfortable. Emily stared into the fire, the flames reflecting in her eyes. "You were there for him till the end. You were there for me too, even when I didn't deserve it." Ryan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You lost someone you loved. There's no deserving in grief. There's just trying to keep going." His words settled deep inside her. The truth was, after Mark's death, she had shut everyone out, including Ryan. She couldn't handle the reminders, the sympathy, or the quiet. She realized how much she had missed having someone who understood the silence between the memories outside. The rain grew heavier, hitting the roof with relentless force. Ryan got up to check the back door. "We might be here longer than planned," he said. "The road's probably flooded by now." Emily sighed. "Guess we're stuck then." He smiled faintly. "Could be worse company." She rolled her eyes, hiding a small laugh. For a brief moment, it almost felt normal, like they were back in the days when Mark was still around. And the three of them would sit by this same fire, teasing each other and talking late into the night. But underneath that comfort was something else. A quiet awareness. A space that used to belong to three now only belonged to two. A loud crash of thunder made Emily jump. Ryan turned quickly. "You okay?" "Yeah," she said, catching her breath. "Just didn't expect that." He smiled reassuringly. "You always hated storms," she nodded. "Mark used to tell me they'd pass faster if I talked through them. Said the noise didn't seem so loud when I wasn't alone." Ryan sat down again, closer this time. "Then talk to me." She looked at him, surprised. "About what?" "Anything. The silence is louder than the thunder right now." So she did. They talked for what felt like hours about small things, funny stories, old memories, and what life had been like since everything changed. Emily told him about her new job at the library, her habit of collecting old books, her lonely Saturday mornings with too much coffee and too few words. Ryan shared how he had taken over his father's workshop, how the quiet got to him sometimes, how he avoided people who reminded him too much of the past. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real. To people who had loved and lost the same person, trying to understand how to live again. At one point, Emily got up and walked toward the bookshelf, running her fingers along the dusty spines. "He loved this place so much," she whispered. "It feels wrong that it's just sitting here, falling apart." Ryan joined her. "Maybe we can fix it together." She turned to him, surprised. "You'd do that?" He nodded. "If you want to. Maybe it's what we both need." There was something in his tone that made her heart twist, not in a romantic way, but in a deeply human one. A quiet connection formed not from desire, but from shared healing. They spent the next hour repairing small things, tightening screws, cleaning, moving old boxes. The simple work filled the silence, giving them both something to hold on to. When they finally sat back down, the storm was still raging. But inside, the cabin felt warm, alive again. Emily leaned back against the couch, exhausted but lighter. "You know," she said softly when you called, "I thought something terrible had happened. I almost didn't come." Ryan looked at her with a faint smile. "I wasn't sure you would, but I hoped you'd trust me enough to try." "I did," she admitted, "and maybe I needed this more than I realized." He studied her quietly, his expression gentle. "You've been carrying a lot alone, haven't you?" She met his gaze. "So have you?" The fire crackled between them, warm and steady. Neither looked away, but neither needed to say more. There was an understanding there, deep and unspoken. Outside, the thunder began to fade. The worst of the storm had passed, but the night still held a heavy calm. Emily stood and looked out at the lake through the window. The water shimmered under flashes of lightning, restless yet beautiful. Ryan walked over, standing beside her. "You know," he said quietly, "Mark would have wanted you to be happy again." Emily's throat tightened. "Happiness feels like something I don't know how to reach anymore." "Then maybe," he said softly, "it starts with remembering what peace feels like." She turned toward him, tears in her eyes but a small, fragile smile forming. "You always know what to say, don't you?" He shook his head. "Not always. Just when it matters." As they stood there, side by side, watching the rain soften into a gentle drizzle, Emily realized something important. This night wasn't about the past. It wasn't even about loss. It was about rediscovering what it meant to feel, to let the heart breathe again. After being buried in silence for too long, Ryan finally broke the quiet. "It's late. You should rest. I'll take the couch." She wanted to protest, but he had already grabbed a pillow and sat down by the fire. She smiled faintly, grateful as she lay in the old bedroom, the sound of rain still whispering on the roof. She thought of how strange life was. How healing sometimes came from the last place you expected. 2 hours had turned into a night. And deep down, Emily knew this was only the beginning of something she couldn't yet name. Sunlight slipped through the curtains, warm and soft, landing on Emily's face. She opened her eyes slowly, unsure for a moment where she was. Then the familiar scent of pine and wood smoke brought it all back. The cabin, the storm, and Ryan. She sat up, realizing how quiet everything had become. The rain had stopped. Outside, the lake shimmered under a pale blue sky, calm and beautiful, as if the storm had never happened. She stepped out of the bedroom, her feet touching the cool wooden floor. Ryan was already awake, standing near the stove, frying something that smelled like bacon. He turned when he heard her and smiled. "Morning. Hope you like your coffee strong." Emily laughed softly, surprised by how normal it all felt. "I didn't even know this place still had food." "I found a few things in the pantry," Ryan said, setting a plate on the table. "Looks like Mark stocked up before he last came here. Guess he planned ahead, as always." His voice carried that quiet respect whenever he said Mark's name. Emily sat down, feeling a gentle ache in her chest. Not the sharp pain of loss, but something softer. The fire had died down, leaving only embers glowing in the hearth. For a moment, the simplicity of the morning made her forget how complicated life had been before she arrived. They ate together, mostly in silence, but it was a comfortable one. The kind that didn't need words to fill it. Ryan seemed different in the morning light, lighter, calmer. As if the storm had washed something off his shoulders, too. After breakfast, he suggested taking a walk by the lake. "It'll help clear the air," he said, grabbing his jacket. Emily hesitated for a second, but then nodded. The air outside was fresh and cool, carrying the scent of wet earth. The lake stretched wide and silver under the sun, surrounded by tall pines still dripping from the rain. They walked quietly along the shore. Emily watched her reflection in the water ripple with every step she took. "It's strange," she said softly. "I used to come here with Mark all the time, but now it feels like I'm seeing it for the first time." Ryan picked up a small stone and skipped it across the surface. "Maybe you are. Sometimes when you lose someone, you also lose the parts of yourself that belonged with them. Coming back, hear it, helps you find those pieces again." She looked at him, thoughtful. "You sound like you've done this before." Kay gave a half smile. "Maybe I have. Losing someone changes the way you see everything, but it also teaches you what really matters." They walked a bit farther, and Emily noticed the old dock still standing at the far end of the lake. It was where she and Mark used to sit and talk for hours, their feet dangling in the water. Now, seeing it again, she felt a mix of sadness and peace. "He used to say this place made him feel alive," she whispered. Ryan nodded. "That's why he wanted you to keep it." She turned to him sharply. "What?" He hesitated. "He told me before he passed that he wanted you to come back here one day. Said you'd know when you were ready." Her breath caught. "He never told me that." He didn't want to pressure you, Ryan said gently. He thought you'd come when your heart was strong enough. Emily felt tears sting her eyes. You brought me here because of that. I brought you because I thought you needed it, he replied. But I didn't think it'd feel this right either. They stood in silence, watching the lake sparkle under the sunlight. For a moment, it was like Mark was still there, part of the air and the water around them. Emily wiped her eyes and smiled faintly. You always knew how to do the right thing, Ryan. You always did. He looked at her with a quiet warmth. I don't know about that. I just try to listen. They walked back toward the cabin slowly, the wind brushing through the trees. The day felt lighter, easier. But under the peace was something unspoken, a closeness neither of them wanted to admit. It wasn't romantic in a forbidden way. It was something deeper, built from shared loss and quiet understanding. When they got back, Emily began sorting through some of Mark's old boxes. Photos, notes, small trinkets, little things that once meant everything. Ryan joined her, handing her each item carefully. They laughed at old memories, cried over a few, and said nothing when words couldn't reach deep enough. At one point, Emily found an envelope tucked inside a journal. Her name was written on it in Mark's handwriting. She froze. Ryan, it's from him. Ryan looked at her, then nodded slowly. You should read it. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the envelope. Inside was a single page. Mark's words were simple, but they carried the weight of love and farewell. Emily, if you're reading this, it means you came back. Don't stay away from life because of me. You gave me more joy than I ever deserved, and I want you to find that joy again in laughter, in friendship, in love, in whatever form it comes. Let the world in again. You deserve to live fully. Emily pressed the letter to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder, silent but steady. She didn't move away. Instead, she let the warmth of sink in the letter, the memories, the quiet presence beside her. After a while, she folded the letter carefully and looked up at Ryan. He wanted me to live again. Ryan nodded. Then maybe it's time you start. The afternoon passed in soft light. They cleaned, fixed small things, and reopened windows that had been shut for years. The cabin began to feel alive again, less like a memory, more like a home, as the sun began to set. Emily stood by the window, watching the golden light stretch across the lake. Ryan came to stand beside her. Neither spoke, but the silence between them was no longer heavy. It was peaceful. Finally, she turned to him. Thank you for bringing me here, Ryan. I think this is what I needed all along. He smiled. I'm glad you came. I think Mark would be too. The fire crackled behind them and the cabin glowed with warmth. Emily felt something shift inside, not the erasing of pain, but its gentle transformation into gratitude. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid to look forward. Ryan reached for his jacket, ready to step outside to gather some firewood, when Emily stopped him with a soft voice. Ryan, he turned. She smiled faintly. Stay a little longer. The night feels different now. He paused, then nodded. Yeah, he said softly, it does. As darkness fell and the stars appeared one by one over the calm lake, Emily realized the truth she hadn't been ready to face before. Healing didn't come from forgetting. It came from remembering with love and learning to breathe through the silence that followed. And somewhere between the laughter, the firelight, and the quiet heartbeat of the night, she finally began to feel something she thought she'd lost forever: peace. The next morning came quietly, with soft golden light pouring through the windows. The lake shimmered, the air crisp with the scent of pine. Emily felt lighter, her heart no longer heavy with what was gone, but open to what could still be. She stepped outside, wrapping herself in a cardigan, and found Ryan sitting by the dock, sipping coffee, staring into the distance. He looked deep in thought, the kind of silence that comes before a difficult truth. She walked over. You've been up early again, she said with a small smile. Ryan turned, smiling faintly. Couldn't sleep much. I was thinking about leaving later today. Emily's heart sank, though she didn't show it. Already. He nodded. "Work's calling me back. And I figured you might want some time alone here. To say goodbye in your own way." Emily sat beside him, the old wooden planks creaking beneath their weight. "You've done enough, Ryan. I can't thank you enough for bringing me here." He glanced at her. "You don't have to thank me. Mark wanted this for you. I just helped." But she saw something in his eyes, something quiet and conflicted. It wasn't just about doing a favor anymore. He cared, maybe more than he meant to. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sunlight dance on the lake's surface. Then Ryan broke it softly, his voice steady but low. "Do you remember that first night? When the storm hit?" She smiled faintly. "How could I forget? I thought the whole roof was going to collapse." He chuckled. "You were scared, but you stayed calm. You always do that. You keep things together when they're falling apart." Emily looked at him, her expression soft. "And you fix what's broken without asking for anything back." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. There was no need for words. Everything that needed to be said lived in the silence between them. The grief, the gratitude, the quiet affection that had slowly grown without either of them realizing it. Finally, Ryan stood up, breaking the moment. "I should get going soon. It'll only take 2 hours to drive back." 2 hours, Emily repeated, her voice soft, almost whispering. She didn't want him to go, but she knew she couldn't ask him to stay. Not yet. He walked toward the cabin to pack his things, and Emily followed him inside. The air felt heavier now, filled with the kind of quiet that comes before a goodbye. She helped him fold a few clothes, trying not to think about how empty the place would feel without him. When he finished, Ryan turned to her. "I'll come back next month to help you finish clearing out the rest," he said. "You don't have to rush," Emily nodded. "I might stay a bit longer. It feels peaceful here." He smiled. "That's good. You deserve some peace." As he reached for his jacket, she stopped him. "Ryan," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "before you go, I need to tell you something." He turned, waiting. "When Mark passed, I thought I'd lost everything," she said quietly. "But you reminded me that I'm still here. That life doesn't end when love does, it just changes form." Her eyes glistened. "I don't know what this is between us, but I don't want it to just disappear because of time or distance." Ryan's expression softened, his voice low. "Emily, I feel it too. But I don't want to rush something that deserves time. You're still healing." "I know," she said. "But healing doesn't mean closing my heart. It means learning to open it again carefully." He nodded slowly, his jaw tightening as if he was fighting to keep his emotions steady. "You're stronger than you think." She smiled through her tears. "I learned from the best." He took a step closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his breath. But he didn't touch her. There was no need. The air between them carried everything that words couldn't say: respect, affection, and the quiet promise of something real. After a long pause, Ryan whispered, 2 hours. "That's how long it'll take to get back to the city. But it won't take long for me to find my way back here." Emily laughed softly, wiping her eyes. "Then I'll keep the coffee warm." They shared one last look, tender, unhurried, filled with unspoken things, before Ryan stepped outside. The car door closed, the engine started, and the sound slowly faded down the winding forest road. Emily stood by the porch, watching until he disappeared from sight. The silence that followed was heavy at first, but then it softened. The cabin didn't feel lonely. It felt alive. She walked inside, picked up Mark's letter again, and read it one last time. The words didn't break her this time. They comforted her. "Let the world in again." She smiled faintly. "I'm trying, Mark," she whispered. "I really am." Days passed, and Emily settled into a quiet rhythm. She cleaned, cooked, and even fixed the garden that had been left wild for years. Every evening, she sat by the dock, watching the sunset melt into the water. Sometimes she'd imagine Ryan sitting there beside her. It's the way he did that morning, calm, steady, patient. One evening, while she was sketching by the window, a car engine echoed in the distance. Her heart skipped. She stood up quickly and stepped outside. Ryan's truck pulled into the driveway, dust swirling behind it. He got out, smiling that same gentle smile that had comforted her through the storm. "I told you it wouldn't take long," he said. Emily laughed, her eyes shining. "You said 2 hours. It's been 2 weeks." "Traffic was bad," he said with a grin. They stood facing each other under the soft glow of twilight. The air was filled with the scent of pine and lake water, the same scent that had witnessed their grief, their healing, and now their beginning. Ryan took a slow step closer. "You okay?" She nodded. "Better than I've been in years." He looked around the cabin, the garden, the lake, all the small signs of life she had brought back. "You did all this?" "I wanted to make it feel like home again," she said softly. He smiled. "You did. More than you know." They sat on the porch together, the sun dipping below the horizon, turning the sky gold and crimson. Emily rested her head lightly against his shoulder, and this time neither of them pulled away. There were no promises, no declarations, just quiet understanding. They had both lost someone they loved, but somehow, through shared pain, they had found something new, a bond that felt safe, real and deeply human. As the stars began to appear, Ryan looked down at her and whispered, "It started with 2 hours." Emily smiled, eyes glistening. "And it brought us a lifetime." The lake shimmered under the moonlight, reflecting the stillness of their hearts. The night was calm, the air cool, and for the first time in a long while, Emily felt that she was exactly where she was meant to be, not in the shadow of the past,